That.
That's pretty cool.
So that's one of my favorites. A $25 model. I shot it from across the stage and I was operating the camera like that. I tell you, as a young supervisor at the time, all I wanted to do is just not embarrass myself. I had 12 minutes to shoot this shot. This is 2 kids, 5 sets over the entire length of the production.
Most people don't usually think of Wolf of Wall Street as having a lot of visual effects in that movie, but it does. They're just mostly invisible.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Visual Effects Artists React. I am super excited to introduce to you today Robert Legato. Thank you so much for joining us on the couch.
You're welcome. I love this couch.
He's been a visual effects supervisor on pretty much every iconic film from like the late 90s, the early 2000s. Titanic, Apollo 13, The Lion King, Jungle Book. He was a visual effects supervisor on Star Trek: The Next Generation. His portfolio is incredible, and I cannot wait to hear some stories from the visual effects world with you guys in this episode. So let's jump in. Rob, we were just talking about kind of your career. Why did you decide to get into visual effects?
Well, I didn't actually decide to get into it. One day on a commercial, something happened where you would have eventually hired somebody like me to come to the set to figure out, or hire guys like you guys to come out and go, here's this illusion. I was the producer, so I figured, well, let me research it, and I'll research it. And I came up with the gag, and it worked. And people said, oh, you're an expert. It's like, no, I was just showing you that it worked. I didn't. And then you get a deluge of, can you figure out this gag? And you figure out that. And I didn't know that at the time that was a visual effects supervisor. So then I got interviewed to Vampire and then impressed Ron Howard. He saw something I shot. And then I got Apollo 13. And Cameron saw that and said, well, I like what you did in this particular thing. So then Titanic happened, and then all of a sudden I had a career. And I still never wanted to do visual effects, but
I would love to watch the rocket launch scene from Apollo 13.
Okay, I've seen it.
Give me a go, no go for launch.
Go.
Retro.
Go.
Vital.
We go fly.
Recovery.
This was a lot of fun to work on. I even comped that shot.
Really? Wait, what?
And so I did it myself because I wanted to learn how to do it. And I get bored when I'm just supervising other people's work. It's like, well, let me try to do a shot. That was, we sort of invented, or I invented pan and tile. So that was the first time it was done. I'll give you that story.
You invented pan and tile?
Yeah, well, I coined it because okay, well, you have to do a lot of editing on this show. When I used to work in commercials, you take location pictures from 1 hour photo and you tape them all together and you make basically a panorama of that. Because we had Photoshop, I was able to do a pan of these things and make them sort of seamless. So now you could do like a pan across. And then we put it on this DDR and they had a little trackball, and you move the trackball or just go back and forth. And it was like, well, that's like motion control then. So I could shoot a bunch of these stills and get basically a bed of things that I could do any shot as a miniature I wanted. Scott Ross, the head of the studio, said, you're gonna kill our studio doing this crazy technique. It's like, I'm shooting 12 frames. I don't know how otherwise I have to go to Cape Canaveral with a motion control camera and do it, because otherwise you would do this and you have to know what the shot is before you do it. The opportunity to go to Cape Canaveral was not back then, and so we had to call it something, and they incorporated it into Nuke, and I called it pan and tile.
Ignition.
Like, this stuff is on camera. I love doing that. This was a classic shot, although I could have done it better.
Houston, we have cleared the tower in 13.
How'd you get the drone so close to the rocket?
That's the magic of movies. Okay, now it's going to get, not this shot, but the next one I think is going to be the one I like. That.
That's pretty cool.
So that's one of my favorites. A $25 model. I shot it from across the stage, like a stage like this, with a long lens, and I was operating the camera like that. We had this, I still remember his name, David E. Seoman, a very good digital artist who made the flames that come out of the rocket. Except back in CG, they didn't have any way of making it glow very well, so it looked like a cartoon. It looked really bad. Although he imitated what was happening very well, so what I did is I had them make me a rig where I could take a camera and I could reshoot it off the monitor with diffusion filters, and I shot it at like 5 or 6 stops overexposed, because back then everything was 8-bit too, by the way. So you couldn't get a nice halation very well at all. So I basically then just reshot it. The rocket's not in it. He just made the stuff that was tracked to it, and then we lined it up. We had some charts and stuff to line it up, and I just reshot it, and that became the element that now was already pre-tracked. It was already done, and it was on a CRT monitor. And I I love the fact of how cheeseball the shot is. It's literally a $25 model. I shot it one day with just a sticks and a head, and I just shook the shit out of it.
You know, you go into After Effects, you go to your filter menu, and you apply your glow or your blur, and you're like, no, the filters are just real filters. I put it on a TV screen, and I just actually have a glow filter, and
Well,
you know, it's like...
Well, it was a black pro mist. So this shot is something that I sort of dreamed up doing, but everything was cheeseball. The only CG portion was the ice.
The ice,
'cause that's
yeah.
the only way to do it back then. And this thing is mounted on its side, so the rocket is straight across here because we couldn't do a snorkel shot like that. So you're basically driving straight in.
So what about the background there,
That's
the
a piece of
ground?
model that we just hoisted up on its side. It seems more complicated than it is, and the only effect really is the CG ice.
Houston, we have a problem. Your personal data is being sold and published online, and you don't even know about it. But thanks to today's sponsor, Incogni, they can take care of this for you. It's like having mission control for your own data. Every time you use the internet, whether you're surfing the web, using social media, shopping online, you're actually leaving behind a digital footprint that data brokers can actually find and then sell to the highest bidder. They get things like your name, your birthday, your phone number, your email address, your social security number, even names of your relatives. All of that stuff is just out there floating around like me in space. Fortunately, you have the right to protect your privacy, and you can actually request that these data brokers get rid of all that information. But it's a convoluted task that can take years to do, and then you gotta end up doing it again as collectors continue to get more information about you. Incogni reaches out to these data brokers on your behalf to remove your personal information from their databases. The best part about all of this is that it is automated, so anytime your information pops back up into these databases, Incogni's on top of it and scraping it for you without you even having to do anything. The idea here is that this will limit the number of scam calls you get, the spam email you get. Ideally, all of this stuff ends up going away completely. I get like 10 to 20 spam calls a day. I mean, I'm getting one right now, which is crazy considering I'm in space. And with the advent of AI voice cloning these days, it's actually kind of scary. You don't want to get a phone call from a family member and be like, hey, are you okay? Yes, I'll wire you all my money. But it's a robot, but you couldn't tell because it sounds just like your relative. These imposter scams rely entirely on just voice information that's available on Facebook or the internet or anywhere. And I've got a lot of my voice out there, so I'm now trying to use this service to cut down on that. So if you want to take back control of your online identity, just go to the link in the description or go to incogni.com/corridor and you can get 60% off an annual subscription to this service that will continue to get your back throughout the year. Anyway, I gotta get back to the couch, so it's time for re-entry.
Tell you, as a young supervisor at the time, all I wanted to do is just not embarrass myself. It got better and better. Tom Hanks was in it. John Sayles rewrote the script. You know, those scenes were really playing out without any effects in them. It was like, I'm the only one now who could destroy this movie. So I was completely nervous about it. And I didn't know that we did something that was actually quite good. There was another shot where we kind of went, you know what, that's pretty cool. I'll give myself that. It's when one of the rings falls away. Super simple, two elements. One is the foreground, and the other one is the motion control shot of it falling away. And then we had a real Earth, you know, so it wasn't a painting or anything like that. It was a real transparency of the Earth that we own as taxpayers. And I certainly learned how to shoot a planet from Star Trek. My gag for shooting planets was super simple, is I would take a transparency of anything, didn't matter what it was, especially in Star Trek, it didn't matter what the image was, and I would project it on a ball, and then we had a little thing that would slide the transparency. It was like a 4x5 transparency on the ball, so it looked like it was rotating. And then I would turn all the lights off and I'd backlight and just create a matte that would be the sliver of the brighter portion of it. In the edit bay, we just put these elements together, and we got to the point, and then we built a star field that we would just take the pan and tilt of whatever camera move we did. So I could shoot 6 or 7 ship shots a day with planets, stars, and all the elements for the Enterprise. And so I could shoot, like ILM could do like 1 shot a week or something like that. I could
6 or 7 a day is a lot even now.
And because I got so bored doing Star Trek, that the fun of it was how many shots can I get done in a day? You know, I was competing with essentially ILM, and at the time I said, well, since you could take Star Wars or any of those movies and put it on your video cassette, you're seeing on TV the same thing I'm competing with every week. So you would have the same medium and the same viewing ability. So I have to try to make my stuff have more of that quality to it.
Out of your whole career, can you think of, like, is there a standout, like, super simple solution to a shot that had a big hit? like stands out to you?
Usually it's the simplest stuff that is the most rewarding, even though you do these $1 million shots, it's like one little thing. So my favorite gag was in Titanic, the matching Jim Cameron's real footage of the mere subs. And of course in that movie, anytime you see 2 subs, I did it. Anytime you saw 1 sub, he did it.
13 meters, you should see it.
Okay, Pier 2, we're going over.
You matched the footage from the actual wreck of the Titanic perfectly.
I was really proud of it. And the other thing it
Perfectly.
did... Well, thank you.
Like, yeah, I can't tell. 2 subs, so you did that.
I did that. Well, it's all real. It's all models, and these things are this big. I imitated the way the camera moved.
Now, is this actually underwater? Is this a tank, or is this completely dry, but it looks like
it's in
underwater?
here, just smoke up the stage. And what it really was is that you had a fan that would blow all the smoke everywhere, and you encased it, so now it became pressurized because the fan's moving the air around, so it make it very homogeneous. So that's what we did. Otherwise, you'd see the waves of the smoke. So it's literally just shot in smoke. It's all it really is. At the time, Caleb Deschanel was going to be the DP, and I was a big fan of his work. And I was setting up this thing to get these things to work, and it wasn't quite realistic because of the way the light attenuates in water. It's warmer at the source and gets bluer and bluer and bluer as it goes away. So because of that fact, I wasn't quite getting exactly what I wanted. And then Caleb said something that I thought was crazy. He said, well, why don't you backlight it? It's like, well, I can't backlight it. All the light's coming from the little mag lights, which are basically the bottles this big, and it's literally flashlight mag lights. I thought about it, and then there was a technique called flashing that they used to do. Used to give a small amount of exposure to the film, and they used to call it breaking the inertia of the film. That you need so much light just to get it to be able to now record. So when you shoot a normal scene, that's fine, but to flash, if you expose it to a little bit of light, it would be not seen until another small light would excite it enough. So what I did is all blue gels, I set it up with Kinoflows, blue Kinoflows, 5 or 6 stops underexposed. So when the flashlight, which is all analog warm white light, would start to fall off, it would excite the portion of the flashing that was only blue. So it was a film technique that once I did it, it created this illusion that the light was falling off the blue.
So there's 2 subs, so this is your shot, but I'm seeing that little smoke poof go out, and it looks like it's underwater.
There's some elements that I did shoot underwater. Jim had this formula for shooting real underwater things, where it's a paste that he makes that when you probe it, it kind of creates this, as if you upset the mud that's really down there. And I think I shot that as an element underwater that we then used and put in here. It's pretty good comp.
So yeah, I was about to say, that means that's digitally comped in then, but it looks like it was there. You've got so many stories that I think we have to have a very special extended edition of this episode on the website, corridordigital.com. Check it out.
Interview with the vampire.
This is my first movie.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
I love film and fire stuff.
And in dailies, everybody's like, well, look, you did a beautiful job. It's like, well, it's fire. It's hard to beat. So all the stunts and everything I did. There's a bad CG shot in here, by the way. That's bad. The idea was better than the execution.
How do you work with that much fire without,
Set it up and shoot it. It's just like I wish it was really way more complicated. You set up a decent angle, and it's like it kind of shoots itself.
For years I wandered Italy, Greece, all the ancient lands.
Okay, so this is the shot where I had to hide a lighting change in the way I operated the shot. So this is the shot I did.
So it's a miniature set.
It's a miniature set. And then I tilt up here on purpose to now see the organ. Now I've changed the lighting below so that when I tilt back down, it feels like it's the same lighting scheme, but it's all different relight. Because originally it was just pulling straight back, all the way back. And it's like I can't hide the shitty lighting that looks good here, but doesn't look good there. there.
So is that happening live during the shot,
No.
or is it a comp shot between two
It's motion
separate
control, so
passes?
I'm just editing it together.
I'm assuming if you had the old lighting down below, you'd be able to see it's probably coming from a little bit of a different direction. The brightness is different.
And the brightness, what happened is look very flat lit because you need to see more detail. Obviously, when you're up here, you have way too much light on there, and I lit everything with Chinese lanterns. So when Susie Dimmitt gets warmer, and we didn't really have quite the same, the idea of doing digital color correction, what you do now on Resolve was way off.
That wasn't a thing yet.
That wasn't a thing yet. At any rate, this shot was kind of cool. That was my big moment in the sun. We were on the same stages next door to us. We were doing True Lies. They had like a crew of like 18 people. And it was me and a kid who graduated from Pepperdine the day before. That was me, that was the crew, and I was shooting the shot.
You mentioned working on a lot of movies with Marty, but like I couldn't help but also notice you've done a lot of films with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
So one of those Leo movies you worked on was Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, it was wild.
Oh, I imagine. Most people don't usually think of Wolf of Wall Street as having a lot of visual effects in that movie, but it does. They're just mostly invisible.
We got plans up here that's gonna take this company into the stratosphere!
It was a company in New York called Brainstorm, and we went out to the Hamptons, and that's where the real location wanted to be, and we photographed all the elements and all the stuff, and this crappy house was somewhere else. Because there's nothing about this that we could use. We can't use the water, we can't use anything. It was an ugly, sin house on the inside. But at any rate, I was very happy with this. It's the first time I used a drone.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a drone shot?
Yeah, and we did. It's the first time we used a drone. Very, the complexity of it and the cards and what it could record. And the things were not worked out like they are now, where it's turnkey. Back then it was iffy. We couldn't tell until after we were done that we actually got the shot. Yeah, so there's a lot of work in this actually.
We at Stratton Oakmont pride ourselves on being the best.
I got the lion for one day. We had to build a special cage.
You had to build a special cage?
Yeah, we couldn't have the lion anywhere near you. This is true. I mean, women, if they're menstruating, can't be on the set. Wow. Because it gets the lion worked up. So we're behind a chain link fence here.
And of course, the people at the desks are not in the shot at all. They're filmed after the fact.
I must have done this motion control. So I designed the commercial, which is supposed to look kind of goofy in 1970s-ish or whatever. I'd shoot a shot, and then he would go, and they'd lock him back up, and then we put the people in. Every shot was done that way.
Risk is what keeps us young, isn't it, darling?
This one I wasn't all that wild about. I think I overprinted it. It was in the middle of winter in New York, and I did a trick to make the grass greener, and I don't know if I like it. I like the rest of it. I like the statue. The other one, that's another one, a favorite of mine in that movie, is the fake tennis court. And that's the dialect coach on the left with Leo.
Okay.
And then I reshot the guys in the foreground here.
So static camera looking at them on a green screen, but then that plate of them is then 3D tracked into the scene.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the parallax and like their feet moving? Because it's like they're from a static camera, but the camera's moving, so technically the perspective should change.
And it does. I mean, when you shoot them on cards, they look like they're nailed to the ground. I mean, this is when you kind of have to know what you're doing. You just keep it like super simple. Like I always call it like being under the top. You always keep it from exceeding its design, what it's there to do. It's only there to tell a story and no more. So the ones that are subtle, keep it under the top. They fit more into the thing, and that's actually more the discipline and the style that you admire, or I admire at any rate.
3 weeks we sailed the Naomi through the Caribbean, eventually taking her home to Long Island, where we bought a house.
This was a little iffy. This made me nervous. Because I went to the Bahamas and I really shot a boat that I was following, and then we had to put a CG boat in, and it's not perfect, but it's good enough.
Yeah, I did notice that you guys shot like on an actual real like boat set that looks just like this, but it all got replaced with the CG boat in the end. Like, what's the main reasoning behind the decision to replace it?
We only built so much. We only built a little bit of it. If you notice, as far back as I can go, so from lensing, is that's a wide angle lens, and if I go wider than that, it's a really a wide angle lens, and it's a really a wider angle lens after that. If I shoot elements, I usually shoot with a longer lens, and then I use those because it's harder to tell the perspective alterations in the longer lens. Because now I have to nail that to the boat. I'm now extracting them and sticking them into my boat, which doesn't have the built-in distortion. Because I can't photograph it, I can't get wide, I can't get back far enough, and I can't do the same camera move I would do. And that's where you make the decision as a supervisor that I'm going to do. Now you're going to be a card. Like in the scene where I did the pullback in the prison, you can't see the fact that the perspective change on their heads I should be looking a little more at the top of their head. Even when we do Hugo, I don't know if we're going to get up to Hugo, but if we do Hugo, the opening shot, those are all cards. I had to design the scene so that I could shoot real people on cards. That was before CG people were even a possibility. But I designed the shot to make the technique that I can only employ budgetarily work. And this was, we decided, since we couldn't get it totally photoreal, that we're going to go with it's a snow globe, that we're into this fantasy world. Once we're into this fantasy world, then anything kind of goes. If I was trying to make it dead photoreal, I wouldn't be able to get there. And so I went with, well, let me now make this into something that artistically makes sense. It gives you the feel of the movie. So when you see this shot, those are all people on treadmills, and they look like their feet are stuck to the ground, and it looks like we're in 3D. And this is in 3D, physical stereo 3D too, and they look really good, and they look correct. And so this whole shot had to be back designed from how far can I get away from the real set with the real camera and drive through. This determined when I did the shot and the timing of the shot that we're traveling at like 25 miles an hour. So we can't have real people in the station. We have to have stunt people because they need to jump out of the way before they get hit by the thing. You can't have a real person there because they'll blow it.
So the start of the shot here, it comes into the station itself. Is that when it actually cuts to the real set, or are those people in the station still on cards?
No, they're all cards here. And then, I have to now back it in because we now have to go through the stage door to start using the station for real. So I use the smoke as a gag.
Right there.
So now I'm outside the station, and if I were inside the stage, I wouldn't have any travel. So I need to be and I also have to be at speed to make the sensation that it's all one camera.
Right, yeah. You got to accelerate up to that speed, and that takes time and distance that you got to sacrifice if you only have a certain amount of space to use.
So then these are all stunt guys, because as soon as they leave camera, they have to jump out of the way because the camera is extended from the actual body of the camera. So that's what's happening.
Oh, it's an actual truck! That's so funny. So it's they have to act so casual and unbothered until the moment they are off camera, then they have to dive out of the way or they get run over by a truck.
So this is 2 kids, 5 sets over the entire length of the production.
And it's cut together to look like a single one take.
I had 12 minutes to shoot this shot. And so I had to rehearse it. And then I had literally, he got time that said he only could work 4 hours a day in England. Wow. So literally it would be you have 12 minutes starting now. So this is this rig. It's a stereo rig, so it's one camera on top of another. So I'm actually going straight down and we're turning the set. That's the rig.
Sick.
And it wants to be a little bit like the shot in Goodfellas. You now could feel what it feels like to be Henry Hill because you're going through and seeing the vantage point that he sees and how his life is now affected by that. So it works perfectly great in Goodfellas. And so this one is this kid lives in the bowels of this place. He's comfortable with it. So we are now with him seeing how he lives every day. And so there's a point, there's a reason for it.
So I wanted to ask you about second unit directing, because you've done that for a lot of films at this point. What exactly is the role of a second unit director? Because everyone understands a director.
Well, second unit director is when there is a particular scene, like in the case when I work with Marty, the action-y scenes, I don't know if he really likes to do them, or it takes a lot of time to do them and things like that, but they still have to be directed to look like it fits into the film as if Marty was there doing it. And usually the challenge is that you have quite a bit less resources to do it. You have less people, you have less camera gear, you have less lighting gear, you have less of everything, and you still need to make it look like Bob Richardson shot it and Martin Scorsese directed it. And what I do, because I'm a cameraman, which helps, is that I stage everything to the light. I don't waste my time doing a dead reverse or whatever, where I have to now clean out everything that's over here, put it over here and redo it. That takes a long time. So I'm always in the optimum lighting spot. Usually they storyboard out the scenes and the second unit director carries them out. Exactly, I never work that way. I always work with somebody like a Marty, and where it gives me the feeling of what it wants to be like. I know how it fits into the movie, and so that makes it fun and exciting to do. And when you see your work on a big screen, that feels like Martin Scorsese did it. It's very, it's a real thrill. So that's the way that works. So you are direct, and that's why I figure out as a visual effects supervisor, you're also directing that scene. You're picking the place, the miniature is the location, the way the camera moves is that, the way, if you're an editor. And a lot of people aren't. I try to convince other supervisors, start cutting your shit together, because then it'll solve a lot of problems. Like in my case, I always cut it together to show the director and the editor what the scene was intended to be as I understood it, so that they don't have to discover it, because there's a logic to something. Why you cut to this shot and you cheated something, and now when you cut to this, it only works in this position where you do that first and then this shot here and then that shot there. So then it's like, oh, now I see it working, and then you could choose to use it intact or change or do whatever they want. At least they see what the intention was. I try to encourage them to be more hands-on and to go shoot. Grab a camera, go outside and shoot it.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, that's great advice. Thank you. I mean, thank you for coming
Oh,
on the
you're
show.
welcome. My pleasure.
Sharing all the information, but also thank you for making such awesome stuff. You have helped influence me and put me where I am right now.
Oh, well, that's lovely to hear. I mean, that's what I got from when I saw things, that now if you could pass the baton on to the next group of people, that's what we do it for. Production is problem solving, and there's it's a chess game, and you get to do it, and it's like, I got the move that's going to get me there, and there's something about that thrill that never really quite goes away if you like problem solving.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. This was a lot of fun.
Is there anything you'd want to direct people towards if they're watching this episode?
Some other episode.
All right, there you go.
Something way more interesting than what I did.